Hello there, everyone. My name is Mohammed, and welcome back to another episode of the podcast, Enlighten. Today, our guest is Sébastien Bourdin. Sébastien Bourdin is professor in economic geography. He holds a Ph.D. in geography and the ability to supervise research. He joined EM Normandie Business School for over 11 years. His research focuses on economic geography and regional science. He's an expert in evaluating public policies, regional economics in the European space, and environmental issues. Sebastian, thank you for coming on the show. Great to have you.
Thank you for inviting me. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, you are always welcome. So I have several questions for you. The first one is quite loaded, but you can answer it as you want. So you hold the position of professor at EM Normandie Business School. And in the last 3 years, the COVID has radically changed the education system worldwide. Universities always have been buzzing cultural hubs for science and culture, but COVID stopped all social gathering, replacing traditional classroom with online versions such as Zoom and Microsoft Teams. So my questions are, how has the pandemic affected the culture at EMD campus? How has it affected the education experience of international students? How the international student reacts to the online education experience? And is traditional classroom education returning to the pandemic as the pandemic subsidizes? Are these reflected in international student enrollment statistics? And what is the strategy to build back the education system and experience in a post-pandemic era, and especially at EM Normandie Business School?
Well, a lot of questions. So first of all, I would say that, of course, universities and higher education institutions did not anticipate at all such event because it was a disruptive event. And in the space of few months, the COVID-19 pandemic crisis completely transformed the practices of the professors and of the students. And for example, institutions like EM Normandie, but other universities have to adapt during the lockdown. And at our school, we, for example, renovated our classrooms to accommodate streaming classes, for example. And we also had to innovate to interest the students who are often bored by the repetition of distance learning courses. And we understand them, of course. I mean, for example, when you are a student and you have to spend 7 hours a day listening to teachers who follow one another and try as best they can to do their course, of course, at a time during the day, you lose the interest of the course. So it means that we had to innovate and to do a lot of pedagogical innovations. And for that, the school, the EM Normandie, was very helpful because EM Normandie has created Qualia. It's like a place of training, support, and reflection about the pedagogical issues and innovation in pedagogy. And in this space, which is an online space and also online meeting, we share with the other professor good practices to make our courses more interesting. So in a certain way, I would say that the COVID-19 has push every professor to think differently the way they were teaching and to innovate. And now, as we are back to normal, I would say, I'd say that this is very interesting because what we have worked and what we have, how we have innovated. Now we keep all of that. And yes, I think it was in a certain way a good thing, because it pushes everybody to think differently how to teach. And regarding your question about the international students, they definitely overwhelmingly want to come back to the campus and live a real experience in Normandy and not a remote school experience. And again, I understand them. And now we see again our international students coming back to the campus in Normandy, and we are very happy with that. And the idea for us now is to make our courses for the international students as personalized as possible, and to consider their rhythm, their needs, their interest, and their motivation, to be sure that they will come back again.
Great. So is there any strategy to build back the education experience post-pandemic, especially in EM Normandie or in other education facilities in France?
Not really. I mean, I think that everybody wanted to come back to the classroom, but to do differently than before. And I think that this is what we are doing now. I mean, I definitely changed the way I'm teaching within the classroom than before the pandemic. And for sure, my courses are more interactive. And from this point of view, I think that there is not one way to change and to bring back to the classroom, but definitely it has changed something.
Okay, yeah, working on innovation.
Yes.
Great. So my second question is that as you are a professor in regional science and an expert in the Union European space, what do you feel are the most relevant barriers for achieving regional sustainability in Europe?
Well, it's a big question. The ambition of the European Commission is very clear, and the European Green Deal is unprecedented. The idea of this big Green Deal is to embrace the need to address the root causes of unsustainability. However, the degree to which these ambitions have been translated into defined or quantitative targets varies a lot between the countries and between the regions. And this can sometimes be explained by the role of the politics. I mean, to achieve, and for me, one of the biggest barrier to achieve the regional sustainability in Europe is the politics. At the local level, the local elected officials have they have a hard time pushing for a real ecological transition. Sometimes they don't want to push for this ecological transformation. So it depends a lot on the local elected officials. And most of them are still reluctant and do not help the local initiatives enough, from my point of view. And we currently understand the sustainability challenges better than we understand already available solutions and their implementation, for sure. There are many great initiatives across Europe that deserve to be known and, if possible, deployed in other regions. But the real problem here is that we don't know the best practices in Europe. We don't know when there is an innovation, whether it is a technological one or a social one. When there is an innovation in Europe, in a region, we don't know that this innovation exists, And from my point of view, it misses a platform, a European platform, when we can identify initiatives and to know how to deploy these initiatives in other regions. So probably it misses also a big platform where we can promote and yes,
Share
promote
same
and
ideas.
share. Yes, absolutely.
Great. So circling back to the previous question, I could see actually through your publication that you are interested in quantitative sustainability metrics, such as, for instance, the assessment work done by the Club of Rome on limits to growth. What's your perspective on that?
My perspective is that we need sustainability assessment tool for make informed decisions. Achieving European sustainable goals, achieving the European Green Deal requires definitely good data and information, but it's still a big gap is existing regarding the production of good data and good information at the regional level. And for example, we don't have any accurate data to measure the evolution of the circular economy at the regional level in the European Union. So in this case, it's very difficult to assess whether the regions are doing well or not. And regarding the second part of your questions regarding the Club of Rome report, this report is 50 years old. And the authors have had the opportunity on many occasions to revisit their analyses and also to enrich this analysis with data accumulated during the 3 decades of unrestricted expansion. And they know now that the model in detail, and they have very well described the destructive impact of human activities on natural processes. So basically, this Club of Rome report that is now old is still very important, and measuring the impact of our activities is the best way to make people react, for sure. And if we can't get politicians to react, and from my perspective, I think that all the climate summits have failed regarding the COP, the COP 15, 17, and so on and so forth. And if we can't get politicians to react, let's get the citizens and the companies to react. And for that, we need to measure the sustainability. We need to get assessment tool to measure the sustainability. If we don't have these tools, we will not act because we will not be aware about the impact of our activities.
Okay, yeah, great. And also just as an addition, so even though that the limits to growth is sort of ancient document, it represents the only way to assess systems in terms of system dynamics modeling. So even though it's old, but it's actually new because currently, scientifically speaking, a lot of scholars and academics are trying to simulate such systems using system dynamics framework. Yeah, that's.
And again, it's about the complexity, and the Club of Rome report is about the complexity of the system. When you touch it to one line, it moves a lot of other lines, and basically this is what we can learn also from the Club of Rome report.
Yeah, exactly. So my other question, as you are recently working on bioenergy and their methanization procedures, what are policymakers doing in this area to transform energy systems in France as a whole, or also from a regional perspective?
So I've been working now for 6 years on the analysis of the levers and the barriers for the deployment of biogas in France. And my research shows that it is not so much a technological barrier that exists to develop the biogas in France, but a social barrier. I mean, there are a lot of problems of social acceptability. People are for the ecological transition, but not to their, not too close to there. So this is the NIMBY effect. There are also problems with the organization of citizen consultation, for example, at the local level. When there is a new project that is implemented, it is requested to organize a consultation of the local population. But most of the time, this consultation is not well organized. So the people are not happy with that. And they are not happy with the project. And they create an association against the project. And sometimes the project is not appearing regarding the question of social acceptability. So today, what I advocate is that political decision makers should take more responsibility for this subject and this energy. This is all the more topical with the war in Ukraine, as territories that produce biogas can become energy self-sufficient. So in the context of the Ukrainian war, being self-sufficient in terms of energy seems to be very interesting, and the biogas can help to be self-sufficient. So definitely the local elected officials have a fundamental role to play, but do they want to play this role when you see that at the local level, the inhabitants are against a project? Probably not, because yes, sometimes the local officials prefer to follow their citizens that follow the general interest. So the big questions about the biogas and the deployment of biogas in France is finally, and it's the same for the sustainability, how to reconcile the individual interests with the general interest. And this is a vast question, and I don't have the answer, but definitely here there is a big problem in France with the social acceptability, and it must be addressed seriously. If not, the biogas will not be deployed in France.
Okay, fair enough. So my last question is, how do you define regional science and why it is important to the challenges we face today? And I just want to know, is the framework of regional science, whether it's dynamic or static? And if it's dynamic, how do you think that regional science will be approached in the future?
Defining the regional science, I say that the regional science, it's a field of social science that develops an analytical approach specifically to urban, rural, and regional issues. So the regional science, it's a very large social science field. It includes the location theory, spatial economics, locations model, transportation, migration analysis, land use and urban development. We also use input-output analysis, and it also includes more actual topics like ecological and environmental analysis. And we have also a lot of my colleagues that are working on the urban and regional public policies. So in a broad sense, any social science analysis that has a spatial dimension is under the microscope of the regional science, if I would have to define the regional science. And today, in regional science, we try to address the major issues of the 21st century, such as migration. We have a lot of colleagues that are working on the migrations, and also the fight against global warming. And by taking a spatial or regional approach, it is possible to show that there are geographical inequalities that exist between territories, and these geographical inequalities must be resolved if we want to address these big problems, like the global warming, for example. So I'm convinced that a major asset of regional science is its ability to policymakers to talk to policymakers and influence the public decision making. From my perspective, I think this is a big asset. Not all the social sciences have this power, I would say. And for example, I organized last week a big roundtable with the European Commission, with the Association of the Metropolises in France, and we invited also regional scientists to talk together about urban and regional problems. And I think that we have a big asset because we know how to talk to the policymakers and how to influence the public decision making for the cities and regions. And for me, regarding your last questions, we are analyzing the social science phenomenon in a dynamic way. And among the future challenges that regional science must address, it is important not to miss the turn of the big data and the open data, and methods such as machine learning to analyze the regional and spatial issues that await us, especially the ecological transition. So the regional scientists definitely they don't must lose the data turn and the use of new techniques like machine learning, because they have the advantage to analyze the phenomenon in a dynamic way. And for us, it's very, very important to analyze the phenomenon in a dynamic way.
Okay, great. Well, this is actually interesting, your thoughts on the regional science and how it will be developed in the future. I guess so far we are at the end of our podcast. I would like to thank you again, Professor Sébastien Bourdin, for your attending and for your information gathering, sharing, and your return experience for all the people who are watching the podcast. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you. Thank you again.